Welcome to the Creatives. My name is Herb White. I'm editor-in-chief at the Charlotte Post. And today we have with us a first-timer on the podcast, J. Leon Pridgen II, the government name
The
for,
government name.
for the actor, author, playwright, and producer. And Leon, welcome to the podcast. You are the writer, producer, and sole performer of the
Yes,
one-man
sir.
play Ben Davis, Watch Him Fly,
Yes,
which
sir.
debuts in Charlotte in September at Carolina Theater. And I'm curious and interested to know, given your background, Ben Davis, how did it all come about? Because obviously you've done your research on him. You're a veteran yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
Benjamin Davis is an often overlooked American military hero. So how did
Yes,
this all
sir.
come about?
Couple of different things. For me, I'm a military kid as well. My father was a career soldier. I have great uncles who were part of the first class of Black paratroopers. And so in my house, the Harlem Hellfighters, the Buffalo Soldiers, um, Benjamin Davis, the Tuskegee Airmen, they were talked about. And so to me, it seemed like that should be something that everybody knows. And so I was introduced to him early as the commander of the Tuskegee Airmen. The thing that several years ago, I thought I was going to play him in a film. And so the way I work as an actor, I like to study and understand who the people are. Well, the more I found out about him, the more I really wanted to know about him because not only was he the commander of the Tuskegee Airmen, he was the first Black man to attend West Point in the 20th century, what that experience was. Then I found out that his father was the first Black general in the United States Army. What was that experience? Because his father enlisted in the Army 36 years after slavery. So all of these things that contributed to who he was just kind of always had me more and more inspired by his story. And the more I found out, the more I wanted to know. And, things that we take for granted in society are some of his contributions. And so it was a thing that when I didn't get the role in his film, I still knew I wanted to do something with his story. And he had no children, no foundation. And it was one of the things I said, well, this story is gets pushed further and further back. And we've seen recently that they tried to remove parts of history from West Point, some different things that were happening in that, and I was like, no, we still need to make sure we understand who this man is and what he's done. And that led to telling the story. And the more research that I had done in the years and years that I've been doing that, um, and when the actor strike happened a couple of years ago and there was a writer strike and things were really slow, I was like, well, I got to do something. And had a long conversation with my creator. And he said, well, I've already given you something that you've been working on. Now it's time to put it on stage. So that's where how all of this kind of came to be.
Yeah. And for a figure like Benjamin Davis, you talked about his family and their legacy
Mhm.
in terms of the contributions to the U.S. military. Um, and you talk about the impact that military life had on you coming from that family and
Mhm.
all the other things to go to. So it sounds like this is just a perfect meshing. It's like, well, you've got this military background. Here's
Yep.
a military hero who, when you stop and think about the 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 general narrative coming out of World War II, you think about Patton, MacArthur,
Mhm.
Nimitz, uh, that crowd. Benjamin Davis doesn't necessarily get that shine, but I guess in recent years, with the elevation of Tuskegee Airmen from
Mhm.
afterthought to essential understanding of American military history, it, somehow, as the commander of the Tuskegee Airmen, he still doesn't, in my opinion, I guess, still
Mhm.
doesn't get the shine that he should get.
I agree. They did a movie, Red Tails.
Hmm.
Red Tails never actually talked about and specifically about the individuals because a lot of the characters were kind of combined people. So it wasn't anybody's individual story. And the characters were fictionalized, but they told a great story, great film, great dog fighting, all of those things. But some of the history of who individuals were was kind of lost in that. And so that's why I'm doing my part to at least say, hey, this is a specific person. There's so many people that participated, but this is the one that kind of has inspired me and whose story that I wanted to tell. And so just to give, and don't get me wrong, there are some creative licenses because it is theater and some things that you want to do, but 90% of what's told is true to who he was and what that story is and the way that we wanted to create it. So,
And so that led to it becoming a one-man production as opposed to
mhm.
characters. That was intentional.
That was intentional. I don't get along with people, so that's no, no. It was the one when I thought about this show, and this is the thing. When I looked at it, I said, "How can I tell this story?" And because I'm not looking at just one place, I'm looking at moving it to different areas and traveling it. And when you start to look at budgets and what does it take to move a 12-person cast, and then the crew, and then the stage manager, or if I do a one-man stage play where I'm able to at least get this part of the story out, now there's other visions of what's going to happen as we move on and things expand. And so, as we're able to do more, we're going to definitely do more. But this is a show that is very simplistic in the fact that it's three set pieces. So it doesn't take a whole lot to travel a table, a chair, and a box. But there are visual elements and an immersive experience so that you've got things that are happening visually, you have things that are happening from a lighting standpoint, there's things that are happening from an auditory standpoint that give people an experience within this play, but something that also travels easily enough because if you need 2 people 3 people to stay in a hotel when you're traveling versus 20, it makes it a little bit more feasible.
Yeah, less crew, easier to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh, and so that's part of the goal is to make this a traveling show. Talk a little bit about Charlotte. And you live in Mooresville, so you're right up the street, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
in terms of being able to do the show in your own backyard, talk a little bit about being able to do that before hitting the road.
Well, we've actually been hitting the road, so we've been doing some things. And initially, I used to serve on the school board in Mooresville, and so the Performing Arts Center, I was there when we were trying to erect and build that. So it's nice to say that the first place I actually did it was in a building that had my name on it. Um, but between here and it's been in DC, it's been in Alabama, um, in a couple of other areas, but we've been moving it to certain things in certain places. But being able to do it in Charlotte, particularly at the Carolina Theater, which has its own history. My tagline for that facility is I'm trying to make history with a little bit of history in a venue that has a lot of history. And but we're trying to do something different and do it here and gain some more support, more momentum, and move it as we launch it and move it to different folks in different places.
In those visits to other cities, what's the reaction been? Has it been along the historic lines, or is it purely about the production itself? What are people telling you?
They a lot of it is it's been educational in a sense. Um, very entertaining because there's a number of people that kind of came into it saying it's a one-man show. How's it? I don't know. I've never been to a one-person show. But the way that the story is told, the way that it's performed, there's humor, there's moments of thought, one of the things I kind of prided myself on, because this is something I gathered as we were going to some different places. Um, but it made me think of Jim Valvano. And Jim Valvano described a full day as one is which you think, one in which you laugh, and one in which you have your emotions move to tears. And I said, well, yeah, that's kind of what this show is, because there are some things and some elements in it that will make you laugh. There are those moments that you will, I hope that you will spend some time in thought because of time, conditions, some of the things that we're experienced and gone through. But there are also elements of the show that emotionally have moved people to tears because of what he's experiencing and what he's going through. Um, it is still a human story. It is a love story between a father and son, and what it means to be a father, what it means particularly to be a black father to a black son, and what it means to guide that individual and set standards. But it's also a father and son story in general, because how is it as a man do you relate to your son, your nephew, your daughter, your nieces, your grandchildren, whatever. But it's a there's some standard barriers there that are set about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father, and what responsibility goes along with that.
Hmm. And I would also imagine you're talking about being a black man in
Mhm.
the U.S. military during World War II.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is that's a heavy
In a
lift.
segregated military.
True.
Yeah, in a segregated military. That was one of the battles that his father, because his father was denied the opportunity to go to West Point, and for political reasons, and the way his route came to get to where he was is part of the story that we tell. But what that challenge was with him, particularly being at West Point for 4 years, and other than an official order, nobody speaking to him, and how that helped make him even better so that he could go to World War II and lead a group and never lose a bomber. All the things that were done to try and stop him only made him bigger, better, and stronger.
In your research,
Mhm.
you come away with in terms of what kind of man, what kind of person Benjamin Davis
Mhm.
was? Because I guess if you skim the surface, you would get the impression he was a hard dude. And is that accurate, or is there some nuance there?
Well, it's very accurate to the people who served under him, but there was that drive to be able to achieve. Um, if you look at, like, and one of the things I've had in this experience is that I've been able to get outside of the history books and war documents, but I made connections to distant family members that gave me another side, a human element side. Because, like I said, he had no children, doesn't have a foundation, but I was reaching out and trying to find something that would connect to the human side of who he was. And through those stories and those conversations, I was able to kind of craft something that showed another side of who he was and who he had to be, and who he was in those tender moments with his wife, who he very much was in love with, and what that experience was, and that sensitivity. Um, but it was always mission first. It was always mission first. It was always about the end game, the accomplishment, and the results. So, but he was, and actually, when I performed in D.C., I actually met two people who served with him, Ivan Ware and Enoch Woodhouse. And so to be able to sit up front and close to those pieces of history and talk with them and also be able to share stories, yes, he was a hard man to be under the command of, but that demand for excellence is what allowed them to achieve what they had done.
Mm. And as a military person yourself,
Mhm.
uh, what does that mean for you? I mean, because obviously you came of age in a different military, totally
Mhm.
desegregated, opportunities that were barred to people like Benjamin Davis and his
Mhm.
cohorts. They're now kind of like, oh, well, yeah, if you're good enough, you can get that. What does
Yeah.
that mean for someone like yourself to
Hmm.
go back and not only do the research and do the performance, but do you draw parallels in terms of what your experience was like versus his?
My experience doesn't even begin to compare. There's a huge amount of appreciation for the sacrifice and the commitment that he gave because it allowed us to be able to, and sometimes, and I hate to say that, but sometimes take for granted the opportunities we have because it wasn't always given. It wasn't always provided and wasn't always rewarded. And so knowing the steps of the shoulders that you stand on um, gives me much more appreciation because had it not been for somebody like Benjamin Davis, who knows what the opportunity would be or when it would have been. Um, so yeah, there's an immense amount of sacrifice and some of the things that in certain ways you feel like he should have been compensated or rewarded or the things that, like I said, if you ever even just stuff that he had done. If you look at the Thunderbirds, which is an acrobatic group, kind of like the Blue Angels that the Navy has,
Mhm.
but that's Ben Davis who started it. And there's no conversation around that. That's what they do to market themselves, but there's no conversation around the guy who
Started it.
created it within, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so many things and things that, like I said, when we look at the play, it gives me a chance to touch on some of those elements and some things I can't. Um, Being in the military, just before I was getting ready to get out of the military, I was doing a show or an audition for what was called the Soldier Safety Show. Soldier Safety Show tours military bases. It's done with talent from the military, tours military bases around the country, around the world. Audition for that. At that time, I had no idea that the Soldier Safety Show was born out of a talent show that was done at Lockburn Air Base, which is one of the first bases that he was commanding, where they were trying to raise morale and started having talent shows just so people could show what they could do. And then eventually it became this group that was going to different bases, eventually evolved into the Soldier Safety Show. Now, when I auditioned for this show 20, 30 some years ago, I had no idea that I was going to be doing a show that was attributed to a man that that created something I was auditioning for. But like I said, it's just those things, that legacy where those pieces are lost. We're just trying to make sure that we keep it alive and we keep telling it. So
Yeah. Well, not necessarily lost. Sometimes it's just not acknowledged.
exactly. True. Very true. Very true. Yes, some things that are not acknowledged. If you've ever driven 55 miles an hour, this is post-military. Uh, but Benjamin Davis was an advocate and had the nickname Mr. 55. Stuff you just see and don't if you don't know, you don't know where it came from.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of your career arc, you've done TV, you've done
Mhm.
movies, you you're doing stage. Talk a little bit about your own career arc in terms of uh, touching on all of those different platforms and
Mhm.
what you bring to those platforms. And obviously, there are differences in terms of
Mhm.
whether it's lighting or shooting schedules or whatever. But
Mhm.
do you have a favorite? And what is it? And what sets the three apart?
I guess the favorite would be what I'm doing right now. No, they're different. They're just it's like children. You know, do you have a favorite child? No. I have a favorite child, but it's based on who needs me the most at that time. And so right now, with what I'm doing with the stage play, that is the preferred favorite because it is mine. It is something that I've created, something that I'm actively pursuing and trying to make happen, trying to get audiences to understand what the story is. Um, but it's also, I guess, I love film, love television, but somebody else is hiring me and somebody else is dictating when I get to go to work. This, at least, I'm getting to dictate a little bit more of where I'm going with it. And this particular piece has given me so much more fulfillment. I think than more than anything that I've really ever done, because part of it is, you know, believing in something and believing in this story and believing in this individual to be able to be trusted with that is a huge responsibility. There are a couple of things that happen every night before I take stage. One, I pray to my creator, um, and ask him to allow those words to flow through me. But I also have a conversation with General Davis because I want to be that vessel for him. Um, and the biggest reward for me is coming off stage. People who know me say that I never saw you up there. And for the last hour and a half, I thought I was looking at Ben Davis. That's the goal. That's the shoes that I want to step into. And that's what I want to be able to fulfill and bring to an audience.
And being your own boss, this is your passion
Yes.
project. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
uh, compare and contrast that as opposed to somebody negotiates with you, signs you to a role. Your job is to carry out the role, and then once it's over,
Hmm.
it's over. But talk
Yeah.
about being your own boss, and even though you have the ultimate skeleton crew, just yourself,
Yeah.
what is that like to be able to get up on that stage all by your lonesome? Success or failure is all yours.
Um, I thought that initially, I didn't think about this, but my career started on stage. And the gap between the last time I was on stage and when I did this. Now, I've been on stage, I've emceed different things, I've done, whatever, but I haven't done a stage production. Um, and it never struck me until I was actually getting ready to start the actual performances that, dude, it's been like 30 years since you walked on stage as an actor in a production. Um, but again, it's given me a lot of peace because I've been able to do it. I've stuck to my guns when people tell me it's not going to happen. Right now we're trying to make sure that we keep our date with the Carolina Theater because we've got to move tickets. Something that's the business side of what you've got to see, or they have to see to be able to say yes, we're going to go ahead and move forward. So that is a huge push. Um, so I would also say, please go to Carolina Tickets or carolinatheater.com and to the show and order tickets. We are trying to make sure we keep that date. But those are some of the challenges. And the other part of it, it's okay because we get there today, we get there tomorrow, but we're still coming. So no matter what happens, there is peace because I know I'm doing something that's way outside of me. There's a purpose for it. There's a desire to make sure that people acknowledge this man who is a hero. So I'm doing my part.
Yeah, yeah. True that. Uh,
Yeah.
what about the future? Do you have projects that you want to do moving forward?
Um, like I said, the one thing that I don't get to control, from when it comes to television, film, whatever, it is I'm kind of a hired gun, and hopefully there's an opportunity. Hopefully there's a series out there that's waiting for me to be on. Nothing that's ironclad or in stone. The one thing that I do have is I've got some potential future dates for the show. The Airborne Special Ops Museum is looking at doing something with Fayetteville State in. the fall around Veterans Day, having conversations with the United States Military Academy, West Point, to do it there, which makes too much sense. He trained there, educated there. There's a barracks named after him. Should have the show there, but we'll see what the climate allows. We're having some conversations and trying to get through the door at Tuskegee where they actually trained, because again, it makes too much sense to to be there. So that is on the horizon as we're still reaching out, looking at some other things and other venues, and and in some cases and instances, if we can find folks that are looking to partner or looking at this and say, "Oh yeah, let's do something with it," we're open to conversation.
Sounds like you're going to be busy. This is
Way, I'm trying to be busier. So
okay, extremely busy.
yes, yes, that is the hope.
Okay. The name of the one-man show, Ben Davis, Watch and Fly in Charlotte, September 20, Carolina Theater. Go to carolinatheater.com. Grab yourself not just one ticket, take the family, take your buddy,
Yes,
take a
yeah,
group of
yeah,
veterans and turn them on to it. And
yeah.
in the meantime, uh, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And for all of you who are watching or listening to this, go to our website, thecharlottepost.com, become a donor, a subscriber, or subscribe to our newsletter, which also includes a lot of our entertainment reporting. We do a ton of that, and we'll keep you up to date with everything that's going on as best we can in Charlotte. Because without your support, well, we don't get to do this. And so, Leon Pridgen, thank you so much for joining us on The Creatives, and much success with the program. I think it's going to be great. And
Yeah.
we have to get together and talk about this going forward, maybe in another venue, maybe another
Yes,
project. We'll see.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and if I could just say real quickly, thank you, Herbert. It is been reaching out, and so thank you for taking the time, opening your arms, and allowing me this platform to spend a few minutes and tell a little bit about the story and the mission behind it. But eternally grateful to you, sir, for allowing me the time.
Oh, well, salute to you, sir. And salute to everybody out there. And we will see you next time. Thanks for watching and listening.